Hi everyone. I'm not sure where to start on this, but I guess the best way is to just start. I was born and raised in Wyoming, and way back in, I'm one of the older trans guys out here, probably one of the oldest that I know of, and I was like born there in the late 50s or the early 50s, and was raised with my mother until I was 7 years old. It was, I guess, August of 1959 when my mother had me go live with my father. She felt it would be better for me. He was affluent. She felt he could give me much more than she could in the way of education, lifestyle, and advantages that I simply wasn't going to get living with my mother. And I know she meant well. This is going to be very hard for me. It's a very difficult topic even today. But if you'll bear with me, I'll kind of stutter through it. When I went to live with my father, I believe I'd been there maybe a week, maybe, and he began to sexually abuse me. I lived in his home for 7 years, I believe it was. My father was a taxidermist. Most of my abuse occurred inside the taxidermy shop and around dead animals. Nothing any child would want to be around, even without the trauma, excuse me, well, drama, but the trauma, much less, the degree of trauma that was involved. It was lengthy. If you were to go out and seek this information out under my old name, you would find ample information on it. A number of years went by. I didn't confront it. I still kept my parents in my life. Let's see. I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm nervous. Let's see. And you wouldn't think I would be, and you'll see why as I talk. When I was 14, I had a complete breakdown. And by then I had already been removed from the home because my father was sexually abusing me. And I had to go in to get help at that time, and there wasn't really any help available in those years. Very little was known about post-traumatic stress disorders. Being an incest survivor, the word incest survivor just didn't exist. Nobody talked about it. It was the best kept secrets. It was shoved under the carpet. Nobody wanted to go to court because it was a very uncomfortable topic. It was still back in the years that women and children were the chattelest of men. Even though it was illegal, much was ignored. As I found out later, as time was going by, that I wasn't his only victim. It turned out that they had found 17 of us, both relative and non-relative children. And the police didn't believe they had touched the tip of the iceberg. I went on to live my life in my 20s, and I had careers. I did okay, probably considering all I did well. And then by the time I hit my about 27, a friend of mine's daughter was abducted out here on the West Coast, and I was one who always remembered, but I just didn't look at it, didn't hold it, I didn't feel it, I didn't touch it. I just pretended like, it just didn't happen. People that were very close to me knew it had happened. Other than that, I didn't like to talk about it. But when my friend's daughter was abducted and was held captive for 10 and a half months, I had to look at it, and I had to deal with it, and I had to touch it. And yet another number of years went by, and I still, once again, I guess I can separate the person from the act. I loved my father very much. That was very confusing for me. I've heard a lot of the, you shouldn't, why, how could you possibly talk to that man, da-da-da-da-da. But I did love my dad. I didn't love what he did, but I did love my dad. And so then time went on, and my father and I had a huge falling out. I was accused of grand theft, and no, I didn't do it. He realized I was getting ready to talk. I was starting to get verbal. I was starting to confront him. I was in my I think I was around 30-ish when that happened. And we didn't speak. He did prosecute me, and eventually it was thrown out. It took time, but it was eventually thrown out. And I didn't talk to him for a number of years. And of course, I started to dwell, and I'm a very noted dweller, and that's probably not one of my qualities. But when I get something in my head and I start dwelling on it, I don't let it go. And so it took me a few more years, and then I kept writing him letters and trying to confront him with what he had done to me as a child, and how dare he prosecute me. And this went on for 7 years, and it was incredibly abusive. All abuse is abusive. This had some dynamics because of the taxidermy that put an extra spin on it. And so then I went on to prosecute my father. I wrote a letter to the district attorney's office. That letter was mailed, believe it or not, I believe it was the day of that huge San Francisco earthquake at the stadium. And so then I didn't think I'd hear anything back about it. Sure enough, I heard from the district attorney's office. I figured, well, that's nice. At least they contacted me, but they won't do anything about it. They started asking questions if I knew of any other victims. I knew of one other victim at that time. That particular victim was a cousin, a female cousin, and she told him, well, you really need to talk to, and she discussed her sister. And so they spoke with her sister. They were getting the same story from all over the country. And then the more they dug, the more they found, the more they found, the more they dug. So then the next thing I knew about, I guess all of that took just about a year. And then they actually extradited my father from the state of Texas back to the state of Wyoming. And he pled guilty. So I never got to take him into a courtroom. I think that's probably better. Although what I didn't like was when they pleaded us all out, my cousins and I. Only 3 of us had been abused in the same county, so only 3 of us were able to prosecute with this district attorney. They had also found female victims in Texas as well. But then their district attorney, they didn't have the same laws. Wyoming didn't have the statutes on any crime, so they were able to go after my father. So my dad pled guilty, and I didn't realize what a huge thing this was. Wow, I never thought it would get. I just thought, well, at least they talked to him. And at least my cousin told him the truth. And then when another victim came forward, well, at least. And I kept thinking, no, nothing's going to happen. And lo and behold, they did. They prosecuted my dad. The next thing I knew, I had media crawling all over me. It was a precedent case. Nothing like this had ever happened in this country. Nobody had been prosecuted this many years later. The oldest of the charges were 30 years from the time that it had happened to the time that I had stepped forward. And then, of course, my cousin wanted to be silent in the background and just kind of cheered me on.